This is going to be a several-part series. I'll try to make it under 5 minutes per episode. So a little bit of background. I have 15 years of experience, beginning as a caregiver for adults with disabilities in 2010. I quickly moved up to become a positive behavior support specialist, where I basically help people with behavioral difficulties who have disabilities, help them with their programs. I became a program coordinator for a caregiving company, like a manager for the company, just managing various houses and helping them be happy, advocating for client rights. I stopped doing that job, and then I started traveling the world from 2018 until 2020, when I was forced back to the US, and then from 2020 until 2023, I was traveling around the United States in like a camper. In 2022, late 2022, a friend that I had from high school reached out to me on Facebook. He and I knew each other our whole lives. We were friends all throughout middle school and high school. And after high school, after I joined the Marines and I came back home, we both got a job at the Alderbrook in Washington on the Hood Canal. It's Bill Gates' hotel and restaurant. I started dating his roommate, and then he stopped working at the restaurant. He had to move back home. His parents were extremely religious and conservative and controlling. When we were 25, he was in an incident. Everybody from my town has always thought that he was in a car accident that caused him to have a traumatic brain injury, causing him to be in a wheelchair and to not be able to verbally speak. And that's what I thought for 17 years, until 2022 when he reached out to me. I'll come back to that story and I'll explain that, but I have to do this in order. We started meeting every week and catching up, and I quickly learned that he had a tracheotomy the night that he had been struck in the head, and he only had hemiplegia, which means he only struggled to move half of his body. The rest of his body worked not just fine, but pretty well. And he only didn't speak verbally because his throat was damaged. He had absolutely no cognitive disability. And I started meeting with him every week and catching up and talking. And he was the same. He was the same person I always knew. And I started to think, my God, he's just trapped in this body. I can't imagine what it's been like for 17 years living with his mom and dad at 43. And being dependent on them physically and not being able to just do anything, because I started to find out that they didn't let him go anywhere or do anything in recent years. They presented him as like he was stupid, like he was mentally, intellectually challenged. He invited me to his house. He started inviting me to meet them and telling me I needed to see what it was like in his house. And as soon as I started going there, I started watching his parents. When he would sign and talk, his mom would grab his hands and be like, "Stop talking." She just walked up and just rested her hand on his so he could never talk. She talked to him like a child. She just took all of his dignity away. His dad didn't even look at him or speak to him. It was really weird how they never talked to each other. His dad never interpreted for him. His dad never did anything with him. It was... Put a pin in that for a later episode. He didn't have any freedom. He had a bedroom in his parents' house. He wasn't even allowed to have a conversation with me without someone present. There was always someone there, either a hired caregiver that he's hired or one of his parents. And at first I thought, well, that's just because he's got a disability and they want to make sure he's safe. That's not what it was. The more I started to visit him, the more I started to notice serious concerns. He was not being groomed properly. He wasn't being presented the way he wanted to be presented. He was talking about how he wished he didn't look the way he did, and how he wished he could go places. He wished he could do karaoke with me and other people from our school growing up. He wished he could do all kinds of stuff. He was telling me all the time all the stuff he wished he could do. And I'm like, why can't you do any of those things? And he told me that he's not even allowed to ride in cars anymore. His mom won't even let him go anywhere outside of where the Tacoma shuttle bus drives. And he has to get her permission to do everything. And I said, why? They don't have, this isn't normal. I've been an advocate for adults with disabilities for a long time. This isn't normal. And he was like, yeah. That's the point. I would come to realize. There were 2 times before I started working for him where he invited me to his house. And he tried to get me to take his pants off. And both times I thought he was trying to get me to, help him out. And we had an intimate relationship in high school when we knew each other. So I was kind of like, it wasn't a big deal to me for him to be like, can you help me out? You know what I mean? Like, it's been 17 years. And so but I was like, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I don't even know if you have the legal right to consent at this point. I don't know anything about your like program. I don't know your disability. I haven't seen your medical records. You're signing to me. You're telling me this stuff, but I don't know. I'm not just going to do that. And when I rejected him both times, he became furious. He was like telling me LOKK, LOKK, and pointing and pointing and pointing. And I was like, you cannot just use me like that. It's not okay. I thought we were friends. Like, that's fucked up. And he was so mad. He was fuming. He was shaking. And afterwards, he texted me like just basically pissed off. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess he's just a typical guy. After about 7 months, he asked me if I would come work for him and be his caregiver. He said there was things that I needed to know and I needed to see, and I couldn't do that unless I was there inside his house to see the ins and outs of things. And so he hired me, and I started in March 2023.